today. Obviously, I've been getting a lot of phone calls from friends and family. Some of the worst wildfires in decades in populated areas. Over 1,000 homes now. It was just 500 yesterday, burned down in Austin and outside Austin. There is a, 20-mile-long fire stretching just outside Austin in Bastrop, just a few miles from where I'm sitting. And government is announcing that they're just letting the fire burn because government can't deal with it. Government can't and won't protect you. The only group that had big enough numbers to accurately assess fires and battle them across the country, because they're always happening, is the National Guard. And then the governor will invite in the Guard from other states. But in the last 6 years or so, they've been pretty much federalized, and they're overseas running checkpoints, building fences, helping grow opium, and helping load it on the aircraft and putting it on the news. So do you think the globalists want the National Guard helping grow opium that they make $500 billion off of, or being dispatched to deal with fires? No, we do have Army here, but we're told they're for combat with the American people. And we do have a record FEMA and Homeland Security funding, but that's for checkpoints and domestic surveillance grids and face scanning cameras and license plate reading cameras and operations on the streets of America, the threat fusion centers, federalizing local police. Oh my gosh, though, there were big cheers. I saw it on the news that Rick Perry returned from the campaign trail, and he said, listen here, Texas is more important. I'm here to fight the fires. And everybody's like, woo, we're saved. But then we got the news today. FEMA was going to come on Wednesday. But now they're coming today. We're all saved. Maybe they'll cut the power off like they did in New Orleans or sabotage the police radios. As they admittedly did. Maybe they'll go to high and dry areas and confiscate firearms again. I mean, everybody's really scared that there's hundreds of fires all around Austin and inside Austin and whole areas being evacuated. I was watching this weekend from my back porch about 3 miles away as 5 helicopters, the Sheriff's Department helicopter and the rest of them, thank God they're actually doing something worthwhile now, flying around, scooping water up out of the nearby lake and dumping it on the fires. Looked like Mordor, Armageddon at night, just huge fires. It is Monday, the 6th day of September, 2011. And I want to get into the big wildfires that are taking place, particularly here in Central Texas, but in different areas of the state and other areas of the country that are parched by a drought, the worst that we've seen since the big drought that happened in areas of the Midwest in the 1950s. Because it's not just about the fires and the 1,000-plus homes that have been lost. It's the fact that from day one, it's been confirmed here in our local news that when the fire departments were called on Sunday, when all of this began, they didn't even respond to the initial fires. And showed up hours later once they'd started. Some of these fires are more than 20 miles long, crossing the Colorado River. The one that started in Bastrop, linked up with 2 other fires, has been the most devastating. But this is what happens. This is what happens naturally. That's why in the old times, people would build a fire break, or basically a 4 to 6 foot mound of dirt or rock around their home place. And when droughts came, people basically would then put goats in around their house and have them eat the grass down to the rock and then turn the goats out outside the rock fence. You drive around anywhere in Central Texas, which is prone to drought off and on, and you see the little rock walls around the houses. That's to keep fire out. That's a fire break. Also, old-timers knew that you needed to cut big strips of timber and fire breaks along property lines, and they would go to their neighbors and say, hey, Bob, let's work together and cut down this timber. But nowadays, it's frowned upon to cut fire breaks. You go out west, they have just incredible fires. Montana, Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Nevada, Arizona, New Mexico, because the U.S. Forest Service in some of those states has control of more than 85% of the land. And they will not allow any of that timber to be removed when it falls over. And it is just gigantic, gigantic piles, in some cases, of 100 years of dead wood. And when it lights up, it's just amazing. Then the Forest Service will attempt to go out and fight it, thus not letting it burn out. And so once you get 30, 40, 50, 60-mile-an-hour winds and lightning strikes when it's dry, it causes unnatural infernos to just roll. You know, growing up here in Texas, every spring, the sunsets are incredibly red and gorgeous. And a lot of times you can even smell the smoke and see it in the sky from Mexico because the winds are blowing from the south to the north, and they're burning their fields, controlled burns, because it puts nitrogen and other key minerals and fertilizers back into the soil. That's how old-fashioned agriculture is done, minus the chemicals, and you see that. So fire is a natural part, and there's all this incredible fear-mongering. I talked to neighbors, I talked to people at the store, because I was basically surrounded by the fires. I live out west of Austin, and there was just smoke in all directions. You could see it billowing up. Beautiful blue skies as the cold front blew in, and we went from about 110 degrees on average to 58 last night, but during the day it's going to go up into the 80s. Just gorgeous blue skies, but billowing on the horizon, big black thunderheads that were not thunderheads, but that were gigantic fires. This is natural. If you read what Lewis and Clark wrote about, seeing big prairie fires and forest fires on the horizon, and big black, what appeared to be thunderheads but were smoke. If you read what any of the accounts of natives were, that was a big issue, was fire from lightning strikes. And that's why there is more timber now in North America than there was 100 years ago and before. Because most areas didn't have timber because it had been burned out from lightning strikes. Humans come in, pump water to the surface from the aquifers, irrigate. In these droughts, where do you see the animals? I've got like 50 turkeys in my yard every day, deer everywhere. And we've got a little plastic swimming pool we fill up, and they come and drink out of it. But the point is, people always demonize human activity. And I've heard Al Gore, he says the hurricane hit New York because of human activity. He's, of course, saying the wildfires are humans. Every time a dust storm blows in Australia, which they've always had there, from the interior, Australia's only green around the edges, the coastal areas. They get on the news and say, pay us carbon taxes. It will fix everything. Literally, just pay government money and you won't have a red dirt dust storm anymore. California had one a few years ago, and the politically incorrect guy got up there on his show on HBO, Bill Maher, and said, this is global warming. I mean, that's like saying you slipped and broke your leg because God's mad at you, not because you didn't look where you were stepping. They talk to you like you're 5-year-old children. So I want to break something down here. This is natural. This area, that's why if you look at a map of the vegetation in Texas, it's green from East Texas out of Louisiana, Mississippi. Some areas are almost tropical. There's swamps with alligators, the whole 9 yards. Like some areas are listed as, what do they call it, subtropical. Tropical, lily pads, 100,000 acres, swamp, rivers, lakes, amazing. And as you move towards the middle of the state and cross about the Austin line west, it starts getting drier and drier and drier. You drive 50 miles outside Austin, say northwest, suddenly you're in scrub brush and cactuses everywhere. You drive another 100 miles, you're in desert. And they're on the news saying this is global warming. Texas is like this because of human activity. Ladies and gentlemen, Texas has always been arid from Austin over. Everything's green right up to Austin, and then you roll off down into the hills that start turning into mountains, and up towards the North Plains Desert. Down towards the south, you can go down into the Southwest. You can go out into Big Bend, where they filmed a lot of Westerns with John Wayne. They went there to film Western movies based in deserts because it's always been a desert. Paying Al Gore money isn't going to change that. And people move in and build in the middle of, on the edge of a desert. When there's a drought, this area is turning into a desert right now. It's always happened. Happened in the 50s. There are the medians in some areas. The grass has been dead for a few months. Some areas, the grass is blown away, and there's desert. It's turning into a desert. And as soon as it starts raining and goes back into that cycle, then it will rain. All those seeds, it's going to look like a flower jungle. Because of all this, when the plants start dying, they all drop their seeds. They say, well, I'm a plant that lives in a semi-arid area. Time to go. I'm going to put a bunch of flowers off. I'm dead. They die. The seeds are there. Rain hits it. It's going to look like a tropical rainforest here. You know, I've lived in Austin when the dam was about to break out at Lake Travis, and it was raining every day for 3-4 months straight, and the asphalt roads were falling apart because of all the rain, and oh my gosh.